So, just before the Christmas break, me and my friend Matt here decided we wanted to make a game. Most people kicking it back, relaxing, hanging with family. Not us. We're masochists.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. I mean, I guess we decided to spend all that time doing that, and that's exactly what we did do, is spent pretty much the entire time doing precisely that, which was a lot of fun and an amazing learning opportunity. And so I had personally just sort of been entering into Unreal over the past couple of months, just doing it here and there whenever I had a solid couple hours, I could really dive in and like complete a whole tutorial and really put some time into learning Unreal. And so when Will initially approached me, I was extremely excited to have another person to work on a game with, someone who's a committed developer like myself. So it's really nice to have you can bounce off each other, and it's easier. It's more fun to commit when you have multiple people involved. So it's easier to commit as well. It's also, it keeps you going.
Yeah, and I messed with stuff like Unity before and tinkered in other game engines, but never really finished a project. So I thought, this might be an opportunity to actually do that. Um, we figured it made sense to use Unreal, largely because Matt had been working it in the past, and we knew we wanted to do something 3D. So we knew that Unreal is very good for 3D games in general. So I spent about a week researching tools and setting up a cloud server to host our version control system on, and I started learning basic networking because I don't want a stress-free break. Uh, and during all that, we were kind of throwing ideas into a game design doc, and Matt was starting to work with Unreal Particle System last I checked, though I think he was doing projectiles before that actually.
Yeah, so just as we're starting to approach like our early development, and we're still conceiving of the game, still concept, still in the like conception phase. So we're still forming ideas around it, and we haven't really started actually developing a game. Really, the only environment we have set up is just for the version control system and whatnot. Really, no actual work inside is really being done, except for maybe tiny little things just so we can test changes and whatnot. Um, but in the meantime, I was working in totally separate environments, just testing with Unreal, testing projectiles, testing particle systems, various things. I mean, the particle systems that I was testing here were similar to what we ended up deciding to go with, but they were not. It was really just an early stage testing phase, and it was nothing close to what we ended up creating. So yeah, it was just a test phase. Yeah.
Yeah, our idea definitely changed a bit over time from what we were initially going to start with. I was like, oh, let's do something crazy with all these element combinations. But as soon as I started doing the math for that and the complexity, I was like, that's going to get so out of hand. With just us, it's probably never going to get finished. So we just kind of stuck to you're going to wield one of three weapons, something like a sword, spear, staff, and each of it will interact with four elements like fire, ice, lightning, etc. If we feel like it.
We kind of considered after I had created, the initial projectile base blueprint and whatnot for the actual like ice, fire, lightning, and earth effects to be sort of put around. Once that was created, I started looking into the Cascade particle system, which is actually the older particle system that Unreal has available still. And we fiddled around with that for a while. I did most of the testing, but Will was, very much a part of the, looking and actual seeing how the effect feels and like looks when you're actually using it in game. And so we spent quite a bit of time testing that, and we did not decide to go with the Cascade particle system. We actually ended up switching to the new particle system, which is known as Niagara. And yeah, so we ended up doing that, and I spent a lot of time working on our base particle effect, which is like just fire, just getting a complete concept of fire, because that is one asset we wanted to keep original to the game, is the actual spells and magic that take place. So those particle effects we'll try to keep as unique to the game as possible without using any external sources. So they're not those assets will be from the game itself, created by us.
Yeah. At one point, I really got into the numbers when I was doing those combinations there, and like, oh, how would you like figure out the amount of combinations and animations you would need if you were to implement them all? Even just looking at what we have now, uh, it's a lot. I ended up doing the math for it, which I will show here. Once we got past this initial setup, hiccups with stuff like perforce and whatnot, and I actually started learning how networking works. I managed to get things moving on one side and then syncing properly on the other using some tools that are in Unreal that actually like allow you to do it locally within the engine. Later, I migrated away from that for networking reasons, but um, yeah, and I began to learn about things like networking subsystems, where you can use things like Steam and how you connect from one person to the other using their network system. Uh, I learned also that like each individual like game service you use has something like that. Like if you're using something like Ubisoft or using Epic Games or something like that, like they all have their own subsystems, and it actually handles a lot of the really low level stuff that I don't have to.
So, so by this point in the development stage, I would say we were, many hours in at this point. But we weren't quite nearing the end of the break that we had. So I would say we were about maybe midway or 2/3. And so I started looking into, I was looking into all these particle systems, and I just wasn't really quite satisfied because I realized, if I was going to use a Niagara system, I might have to simulate, or rather, like I might personally have to try to interpret how to make the explosion look as real as possible. Whereas if I did it with a full simulation, then I wouldn't actually have to make it look real. It would just look real based on the simulation requirements. However, obviously that would have certain hardware restrictions and whatnot due to the level of compute that we would need to render those. And so we experimented with that. We put the plugins in the actual main game and got it running in the main world, and had it running and stuff. And we tried them both in sort of like a full simulated version with full 3D volumetric fluid simulation. So that was very intense on your computer, and it would regularly crash and lag, um, just because of how much work it is to do that. So we decided to remove all that from the game entirely, and we're not going to have any volumetric fluid simulation, but we are going to use some similar effects within the Niagara system, on our actual particles. So when particles are in the air, your character will actually be able to interact with them like individually as a character. So you might be able to move your hand out in the air and actually touch some like spark or ember, for instance, if we implement emotes at some point. But as of right now, that is a feature in the game. So
Most of my time during that 2 weeks was spent just debugging our version control, fixing weird connection issues, playing tech support, and just trying to figure out why like Unreal and Perforce wouldn't get along, and then it would randomly break, and then it would just work. That was my whole life. We spent most of our time on Discord calls, bouncing ideas off each other, and just trying to keep progress moving. Um, it, while all the tech support stuff was like frustrating at times, it was still pretty fun and interesting to see how everything will work or would work in like an actual game development environment from a very high level. Aside from the problem solving, we made solid progress. Something cool I learned, which I thought we might use later if we get ambitious, is I learned how to modify terrain and set up like destructible models. So you could have, like in something like Marvel Rivals, where you can destroy a part of the building after you deal enough damage to it. We were thinking, I was thinking maybe you could do something like that. You cast a fireball, just blow a hole through the wall, and all of a sudden you just change the way the whole map works and change like the dynamic of the gameplay.
after spending a lot of time creating, various particle systems and whatnot, I had a lot of fun with that. But I did need to sort of move on from that. I created fire, like a decent fire system, and added it onto my projectiles. And so, we basically had a base projectile, that could be reused, and then you could, just put a different system on that projectile. So you'd have, a fire system, which would basically be the same as, say, an electricity system, but they would look completely different with a totally different particle effect. And so that was essentially what I was building. So we got that working, and that was all nice. But I decided, now that I have an understanding of that, I should probably look into, some more fundamental stuff so we can really start testing and actually building a system that we can test. So I started looking into the damage system, um, some something obviously a lot more fundamental, health bar and some UI features as well, which me and Will did spend quite a bit of time debugging together, as that was a bit of an issue. As
Yeah.
debugging can be a bit of a struggle, and also, I we were looking online, and I was looking online through various tutorials, and I wanted to try to build something that was going to be adaptable to changes in the future for the game. So I went with a design that was you could add on to. You can constantly add features, add different things to certain ways that the character takes damage, um, and just the way that the character fights in the game. So the combat would be malleable even from a programming point of view. You'd be able to add in your own features quite easily, um, as an Unreal developer. Because the way that it's been designed is able to take in new input and be changed around. So that was really what we wanted to do, and so that's why me and Will actually had to spend a lot of extra time as well getting it working on the networking side, because all that data has to be transferred over the network, and so my health has to be the same on your screen as on anyone else's screen or the host screen, and so that is something we're still tackling to this day as things change in the game. Things switch around. So yeah, we're still working on that, and I mean, for the most part, it is complete. But there's always things we're working on. So
I made like a basic test space. Well, actually, we built it. We just got bored. We're like, all right, we should model a space for ourselves so we can like work within. So we just modeled a couple walls, threw them around. I built a simple main menu so you can actually connect to network game instances. I didn't really have the functionality for actually a long time, uh, because debugging. So at this point, I was mostly like focused on just refining the network and making sure everything is sync properly. Uh, Still working on that, but
after me and Will spend even more time debugging and testing, um, on the damage system, getting it working over the network and whatnot. Now, it's still in a work in progress, just because of things constantly changing. They interact, so it's all connected. But yeah, I decided to start working on the AOE system because at this point, Will was clearly prioritizing network. At least that was more his speciality than mine. So he was focusing on the networking side more so than I was, and I was going to sort of tackle a different job so that we could sort of get more done, but also, it still get valuable work done. We don't want to compromise it, and like rush through things, and sort of just race through stuff and become overwhelmed with all this stuff that we don't really fully understand. So Will was tackling the network side for the damage system that I built. I was assisting him in getting that done. And then at the same time, I was building an area effect based blueprint. So basically, what that is it's an effect. It's an affected area. So let's say fire. If your character walks in a fire, they're going to get burnt, which would mean they're going to take some damage. And so we can adjust that damage and do a variety of different things with this AOE base blueprint that I have created. And so I built a bunch of sub children of that base, and so that suits a variety of different needs, from anything from like lightning strike to, say your character heals or casts a healing spell on the ground, and so they can cast that spell either at a distance or they can cast it on themselves. So let's say they're walking around, they'll have they'll be healed, or they could cast it in a specific place where if you walked into that area, you would then be healed by it. So that's what I started tackling.
You're actually so right. I was thinking about like, oh yeah, the shooting system. Yeah, we can reuse a lot of that stuff. I didn't even think about the AoE. I was like, ah yes, we have an AoE effect. I didn't think of it like the translatable possibilities. I don't know why.
Yeah, no, the I built a base, so the AoE there's like you can turn it to a million different things. We already have lightning, explosions. Yeah, I mean, honestly, the explosions are probably the coolest effect that we have. I mean, if you want to put this in, that's fine. Yeah, the explosions we have are probably the coolest effects, at least in terms of, I don't know, maybe my most proud works, even though they're pretty rudimentary at the moment. But they interact with the world around them very nicely, and so it's those sort of effects and attributes that I'm hoping to incorporate once we're able to actually improve the actual visual part. So currently the effects work nicely, but they don't maybe look the best. And so tweaks in that in time, but I think other parts of the game, other aspects are going to take priority over that for now. So
Yeah. So that's basically what we managed to build in a month. You know,
yeah, exactly.
you know, other people chilling out. Us now. Let's figure out Unreal, set up servers, fix a ton of network problems. Like honestly, no regrets. It was great.
Exactly. Yeah. So looking back, it was a great experience, and it still is a great experience. Obviously, we don't have nearly as much time to work on things as we normally would when we were on the break, but it was still a great experience, and yeah, we did have a lot of challenges as we dealt with it. There were definitely moments where I was like, "Holy moly, we've really got a lot here." But as you tackle each little thing at a time, you slowly feel a little bit better about the whole process, and you have more confidence in the process as you end up with an actual, game that you're testing and playing. We started with nothing, and now we have a character and a system, a damage system, and a network capability. So it's not just some crappy network. It's actually capable, and that's in great part mostly to Will, and the other parts are part to me. But yeah, no, it's been great, and I have to say at the as like the Perforce stuff, Will, that is so commendable because like oh my god, like that's honestly some of the hardest part about game development and really any development as a developer is the pre steps you have to take, where you're like working with Postman or doing stuff like that. You've got to download all this other software just to get your one software to work. There's all these stepping stones, and you really went above and beyond with the Perforce stuff because that was a nightmare, and I remember dealing with it with you, and you definitely tackled the main brunt of that. So really appreciate it because it made my life a lot easier. So yeah,
Yeah,
so thank you, Will. Thank you for doing that.
I've definitely got more to learn. But that school's back, and we both have a career fair coming up. Like, I want another month to work on this, right? I mean, like, we're already a month out from like when we actually did that.
March break is coming up
It's
too.
February. Like, yeah, it's February, so we're like about a month out from when we
Yeah.
made this. But I really wish we had just another like straight. Oh yeah, I guess March break. Yeah. I really
And
wish I
reading
just
week.
had a lot of more free time. I could just work on this because I see so much potential
Yeah.
in it, and
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's exciting.
we could definitely get it in a playable state. I'd really like to see that.
Yeah, I think it would be awesome to see both. Like if even just me and you can play against each other.